And we are live. Welcome to the Tripod, where we break down the NRL every game, every week from a punting perspective. I'm Jacob Wynn, he's the Padonis, and we're here to recap round 6. Another unsuccessful round for us, 1 and 2 on best bets, and we lost the mixed matchup that was played across 3 games, lost it by a combined 4 points. It's kind of painful to think about how many different points along the line in those matches. We missed out on 4 points, but we'll talk game by game. The thing about the Tripod, more importantly than anything else, is always the results. So we're not going to sit here and pretend it doesn't hurt coming off a losing weekend. We don't want to be that meme. Is it a dog that's sitting sitting at the table and the house is on fire and they're saying this is fine? Because it's not fine. We really want to leave no stone unturned to turn these things around and get better results. In saying that, I would play all 3 best bets that we shared this weekend again, even though we went 1 and 2, but we'll go game by game. But if fundamentally you kind of think that there's an area where we are going wrong, I'm talking to our followers, please share your feedback. Let us know. What do you reckon so far, Padonis? I refuse to kind of blame it on luck, because the classic punter adage is when I'm winning, that's me, and when I'm losing, it's bad luck. But we haven't had a lot of good luck so far, have we?
No, we definitely haven't had a lot of good luck, but whether it's bad or good, just most of our plays, our intent is to take luck out of the equation. We like to try to be on a side that we think will be dominant for the 80 minutes. That sort of hasn't been the case so far this year with a lot of our plays. The games have sort of almost all of them seem to be in the balance. I would like to say that this weekend, though, we've had more bad luck than we've had previously. A couple of bad beats towards the end, and it always stings. But in saying that, if we look at the Canberra Sharks game at round 1, we sort of got to try at the end as well to sort of win a bet. But we've definitely been on the wrong end of a lot of those last 2 or 3 minute tries. But 2 losing weeks in a row on our best bets. So it's definitely something that we need to sort of address and try to move forward and try to sort of stick to our process. We sort of said it last week that we're not going to sort of change a lot, because I don't really feel like, especially this week, we need to change a whole lot. I felt like we got the game sort of right. A few things sort of fell on the wrong side of us. And if you look at that Gold Coast game in particular, they were down in a big hole early, and they won the second half 3-0 in terms of they scored 3 tries to 0. And somehow it was 4 tries all, and we end up losing that, which I'm sure we'll touch on when we get to that game. But stick with us, everyone. We're sort of, we're close, but always seem to fall short at the moment.
One thing I'll correct, that's actually 3 losing weeks in a row on best bets, I believe. But as I say, like, you're going to get ones that are decided right at the end. And every time you lose a close one, they're not all unlucky. You only hope to win half the close ones. In my head, through a season, I usually keep a bit of a tally of like when we win a coin flip one and when we lose one, just for my own peace of mind. I like to at least hope we're winning half of them. But I think you make the great point there. You're not going to win money long term just betting $90s on coin tosses. So we need to find plays that win a little bit more comfortably. We'll go game by game and talk about what happened. On a positive note, Dabble, who sponsors this show, they've now got same-game multis. You gave out a same-game multi this week. That cashed at $4.20. I gave out a same-game multi this week. That cashed at $5 on 2 different games. Of course, we're just a week off the Five Guys multi winning at 21-1, and then you won an NBA multi on Monday. So there's been some fruit bared. Finally, I gave out a winning multi on Dabble as well, but still not our round multis, which is the ones we track in the units that you can see scrolling across the screen. So as I say, I hope that, if we're going to have bad luck, if you want to call it that, that when we get our fair share of some fortunate ones, if they can all come in a bunch, then that might just help us get a big multi across the line. So I'm always a believer that there's no point really kicking stones about good or bad luck, because if you tip for long enough, it has to break both ways. So that's not for us to kind of worry about. What we want to do is look at each game, figure out what we can learn, what we can take away, and what we can apply to our coming weeks punting. Before we jump into the games, let's actually hear from our other sponsor, Top Sport, to hear how they went from the bookie perspective.
G'day Tripod family, Tristan Merlihan here from Top Sports. Been an interesting week. We started with that interesting game between Canberra and the Cowboys where the Raiders jumped out to a big start and then the Cowboys came home over the top. So that was our biggest result of the weekend. But then it got a bit barren away from that. We needed the Bulldogs pretty heavy, but that sin bin really hindered their chances. So the Rabbits and then also the Panthers came home over the top on Good Friday to both cover the Lions, where we needed the plus in both of those. They're both very, very well backed, or the Panthers in particular. The Titans-Manly game was money both ways, same as the Storm-Sharks game. It was a beauty, and that was money both ways in that one as well. And then the Roosters, we had a slight win on that one, but all the multis running through the Roosters head-to-head negated that a touch. So we've got a big game tomorrow where the money's just been one-way traffic for the Eels. It's been a line move of 20.5 out to 21.5, but it's just been solid at that 20-21 mark, and all the head-to-heads through the $1.08 shots, which obviously looks like they'll be getting the chocolate. So so in a nutshell, the favourites have probably been too good other than that first game, which was obviously tied in the betting to begin with. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. I hope everyone had a successful weekend, and we'll chat to you Wednesday.
Thank you, Tristan. Let's rewind. Opening game of round 6 was the Cowboys 18 defeating the Raiders 12. Our best bet was the Raiders -4. So that was a rough one to start the round. How did they blow this one, Padonis?
Honestly, I'm still trying to scratch my head, and it's been 3 days since Canberra go up 12-0 after 13 minutes. And I wouldn't say it was looking good because the game just started, but the Cowboys sort of seemed to be really slow to me. And we sort of said it on Wednesday that they might sort of struggle in these conditions. And it sort of felt like they were. They were making quite a few errors. Their line speed was slow. But I don't know, Canberra could have they could have ended the game at halftime there. They had about 2 or 3 tries that they bombed, plenty of opportunities on the Cowboys line, and just didn't seem to sort of get that try to sort of break their backs, which I would have felt that would have happened. And then to start the second half, just to get into a groove and sort of get into the rhythm again, like it never happened. The Cowboys got 2 penalties on their first set just after halftime and ended up scoring a try after 2 or 3 minutes and sort of gave them hope. And you sort of said it in the comments on the live game thread that if they did score, it sort of would re-energize the Cowboys, and it sort of did. And they were the better side for the last half an hour, but I don't think I've seen a worse performance in the last half an hour from the Canberra side in a while. Quite a few errors, only had one set on the line. And in saying that, they still went down the Cowboys' end and could have got their noses back in front. But they always sort of seem to be one step behind and pretty disappointing in the end. And another big lead that they've sort of given up. And I don't know what's happening there. Can you sort of pinpoint anything that you sort of see, why they keep on sort of losing these leads?
At this point, I feel like it's some sort of deep-seated psychological issue because they were completely dominant in the first half. It was 12-0. I was saying in the thread I wasn't happy. Like, you should be happy because we've been in a bad run. Our best bet's leading 12-0. The Cowboys were horrendous in the first half. Like, if you were on the Cowboys, you would have been gone berserk. Like, the amount of errors. When they got an attacking set, I think the Cowboys actually scored a try, but it was obstruction. And then they had one where they got the ball just clean stripped. They were never in the game. Nothing went right for the Cowboys. But as you say, the Raiders, bang, bang, 2 converted tries after 13 minutes, didn't score again. You have to capitalise when your opponent is that bad, when your opponent's down and out, and when your opponent makes errors, you have to hurt them. The Raiders should have been up 24-0. I mean, they walked off at halftime. The commentators are saying the Raiders played perfect. And I'm thinking to myself, like, you let in one try and it's game on again. And the Cowboys would have been laughing. And sure enough, second half, after the Raiders didn't make the Cowboys pay, the Raiders paid the ultimate price for their mistakes. Nickel Cookstad made back-to-back mistakes at fullback, got dragged a minute later. That when they gave up a try off his errors. And then the young gun Savage, who I was glad they put him on because Cookstad, whether he was concussed or cramping or whatever, he was hurting him. Savage's first play runs over the sideline at 12-all and invites in the winning try by the Cowboys. But yeah, the Raiders had opportunities on the attack. I remember one point in the second half, they're up 12-6. They had a scrum for a repeat set. They threw a forward pass and knocked it on the first play off the scrum. Like, it's not smart, but it was there was a clear drop in intensity from how the Raiders played in the first half to the second. So I don't know what changes. I don't know what Ricky says to them, but I don't know why they drop off. It was such an important game for them. You've already lost to the Cowboys once this year. You have back-to-back losses. If you're a real team, you just don't blow that game. So incredibly disappointing for the Raiders. And we're in a great position. And it's another one where, toss up first half, second half. You got an easy winner if you played them in the first half. We played them full game. And I know people will say, well, you should be used to the Raiders choking, but it's like only 3 weeks ago, wasn't it? They were down 20-0 at home and they came back second half. So I can't figure out when this team is going to be fully focused and all in. They were so far off the pace that second half. That really hurt us, and it hurt the mixed matchup too, which accumulated points through the 3 games. So not a good start to the round. Sometimes feels like when the harder you work, the worse it gets. And it has certainly been some tough sledding for us. But let's move on to Friday, the game you were at. So I'm keen to hear your perspective. And the full-time score, Rabbitohs 36, Bulldogs 16, doesn't necessarily tell you the full story, especially the first half hour of this game. How'd you see it?
Yeah, I think it was a common theme across both of the Friday games. The sort of big score sort of didn't really reflect the contest. I sort of felt in the first half the Dogs were the better side for the first 20 to 25 minutes. I did go out to the game, so it was nice to sort of see my first live game this year on a big crowd. It was about 35,000 there, which was always good to see on the Good Friday. But yeah, I think the sin bin really changed the game in that first half, and I've sort of felt like it was warranted. There was a lot of repeat sets, penalties that the Dogs were sort of almost hanging around on the play the ball on purpose. So a lot of people afterwards are saying it was a bit harsh, but you can't always expect the ref to give you a warning. Sometimes if you keep on doing it, then repeat infringement, and it is what it is. He had to walk. That sort of changed the game. South sort of opened them up at will. They sort of scored 3 tries, like sort of back to back to back. And then I really didn't feel like the Dogs sort of recovered at all. And then in the second half, it was more of the same. South were pretty strong. They didn't even have to get out of second gear in that second half, because I sort of felt like if they were on, they would have scored a few more tries. And then at the end, I think the last 5 minutes, the Dogs scored 2 tries there to sort of make the scoreline a bit more respectable. But yeah, for at least 40 to 45 minutes in that first half, it was anyone's game, and the Dogs were looking like a live underdog. So lucky for me, the sin bin did hit, because I was a bit worried there for the same game multi I gave out. We needed South to be leading at a halftime by 4 or more, and the sin bin helped us get over the line there. And then yeah, second half was a few points were scored.
Yeah, that sin bin totally changed the game. Now, sorry to do this, but I'm going to jump back to Friday because I had a couple other points I just want to make. One is, okay, when a team makes an error and the other team picks the ball up and it's live, the NRL needs to officially call that a free play, because it's just a grey area of what classifies as advantage when a team gets the ball off the opponent's error. I think in the Super League, I don't know if they still did it, but they did have officially a free play. That would be fun. Teams might do like triple cutout passes or flick passes or crossfield kicks, but there was a key moment at 12-all in the Raiders-Cowboys game where the Raiders spilled the ball on the Cowboys try line. The Cowboys ran it 30 metres off their line, and then the Raiders got a one-on-one strip. And the ref went back and said no advantage. If you ran the ball 30 metres, you took advantage. And then they ended up, obviously, the Cowboys retained the ball and end up scoring. So that hurt. The other point, just, from a betting perspective, you could get +6 at kickoff. So it's like closing line value counts for very little, but we're on the right side, at least laying the 4 that was available, and even 3.5 available on Wednesday. But again, it doesn't count for much when a team puts up a second half performance like that. Okay, so Friday, you're right. Like, we didn't know whether the Bulldogs could hang in there. They haven't been too impressive in recent weeks. But if you didn't watch the game, the Bulldogs not only scored the first try, but had good opportunities. I think came within a whisker of being up 10 to 12-0. I think it went to the bunker, and they were just a centimetre off a grounding. And then the Rabbitohs wouldn't have been up at halftime. It was absolutely game on, and they were under a lot of pressure. And you're thinking, where are the points coming for the Rabbitohs? Walker's been sketchy all season. No Latrell. They still don't have Reynolds. But the sin binning, but the only reason people might say it was harsh is because the actual incident that got Marshall King sin binned, he may have just been unfortunate and got his arm tangled in the ruck, and he may not have been able to pull his arm out. But it was on the back of like multiple repeat infringements by the Dogs. So you open yourself up to that. And then I believe the Bulldogs did not possess the ball in the entire 10 minutes that Marshall King was in the bin. So the Rabbitohs just took total control of the game and never gave it back. Moving to Friday night, another game that was kind of a mismatch on paper. And the final score maybe doesn't give any credit to Brisbane, who went down 40-12. But the Broncos weren't all that bad, were they?
Nah, and it was another case of the Broncos sort of hung in there and fought hard. And if anything, they should have had the lead at halftime. Again, we saw it in round 2 when we had the Broncos up against the Bulldogs, where Staggs goes over the line and drops the ball. And it happened again in that first half at 6-all off a nice grubber there from New, I think it was. He needs to score that, really. If you're an elite player and you've got aspirations to be in the Origin side, and potentially there's an opening this year with Mitchell in doubt, so he really needs to sort of score those tries. But he's saying that I sort of felt like last week he came to life and he sort of carried on from that. So it's great to see if you're a Broncos fan. And it was a very spirited loss in the end, even though Penrith sort of went up a few gears in the second half and put a few tries away. And some of those tries were great to watch if you're just a league fan in general. Some of the entertainment that they can sort of produce. Cleary and Yao are just unbelievable through the middle there, and against tired forwards, it's very hard to stop. So Penrith keep on rolling, undefeated, but I won't take anything away from Brisbane, and they definitely don't lose any admirers. And next week they play the Bulldogs, and it's a lot down in class from the last 2 games that they've sort of faced. So interesting to see how they go against someone at their own level.
And they'll get back Payne Haas. But given everything, all the factors into this one, and who was missing for the Broncos, they played as hard as they possibly could. They gave their best, and they scored the opening try. They were willing to roll the dice, kick early in sets, because you don't have too much to lose, and maybe you catch the defense napping, and you're not going to go through Penrith. So you've got to be able to try to manufacture points. And from 6-0 up, it was only 12-6 at half time. So if you'd played, and this was a huge line, this line got all the way out to 25.5. So if you played the underdog, they gave you everything they could, and they still lost by 28. Again, it's another exercise in depending on when you played the line, because it was a 22-point deficit right till the final whistle. And then Penrith could have taken the 2, chose not to, went for the try, scored on the final play. On punt review, it's a knock-on, but gets called a penalty try. That could be all the difference for the people that were on plus 24.5 or minus 24.5. But what I took away from this game was we should have been on Penrith. And I know we said we liked Penrith at minus 21.5. Maybe we played them if it was under 20. But the fact that I've just said Brisbane played as well as you could have possibly hoped and still lost by nearly 30 just shows how inevitable this Penrith side is. And even though it was only 6 points at halftime, you just always felt like Penrith was going to crack them open. And it's a testament to the patience and the maturity of this Panthers side. And you look at their leaders, guys like Yo and Cleary, they never blink, they're never phased. You want to arm wrestle with them, they'll arm wrestle with you for 20 because they know they're going to wear you out, and they know that when they get their chances, they will be clinical. And they ran through Brisbane. So, if you can win by that margin and your opponent actually played well and the opponent is actually proud with their effort afterwards, it shows how dominant you are. And if Brisbane was not on their game on Friday night, it would have been 70-0. So Brisbane actually, they will actually hold their heads high after that one, and they will be very thankful that they can drop in class in their next opponent. All right, this next game we might go a little bit more in depth, and it's going to hurt to do so. Maybe a little bit of a rant. I'll let you kick it off. Final score is Manly Seagulls 26, beating the Titans 18 on Easter Saturday. Our best bet was Titans plus 6.5. Where do you want to begin?
First half, the Titans were pretty poor, I felt. And all we ask is when we have an underdog, one of the key rules is sort of to start well, complete your sets, and sort of try to take the crowd out. And that's the opposite of what happened. Manly sort of steamrolled them early. The Titans always felt like they were on the back foot. And then, they couldn't sort of defend their line. And then Manly scored 4 tries in the first half. And let's talk about the first one, because they confirmed the try pretty quickly on that grubber from Olakau'atu. But I don't know. You could tell me, maybe it's me talking through my kick there, but I've sort of felt like he dropped the ball, and whether or not they could have at least reviewed it in depth. But yeah, he was leaning over the ball. I sort of felt that he lost contact with it, and then he grounded it with his chest before he sort of re-gripped it. And that's the new sort of ruling they've got this year. You've got to re-grip it. You can't just fall on it. So I felt the Gold Coast were pretty hard done by there. And then it was a...
Well, just on that one. So, I mean, the commentary team, they went, oh, he's dropped that. I saw it. I thought, oh, he might have dropped it. You saw it. You're saying he dropped it. I mean, Holbrook, he is the Titans coach. He thought he dropped it. If only we had some sort of system that could watch the replay and say, oh, can we have a closer look at that? If only there was some sort of mechanism like that could overturn a try. And I'm not even saying overturn it, but to not even look at it. And there was one other moment a few minutes before that as well, where the Titans had the ball. AJ Brimson put Sammy over for the first try, but Sammy spilled it. So, again, a couple of moments early that didn't get us off on the right foot, but continue.
Yeah, and they do have something in place. It's called the bunker. They just need to use it more.
Well aware, because I know what happened later in the game. But they only choose to chime in at certain times with no rhyme or reason, unfortunately.
So then the Gold Coast come out second half with nothing to lose. It's sort of down 3 scores. I sort of felt like if they started playing like that in the first half, we would have had a live chance and not only covering but winning the game outright. Fafita sort of steamrolled their edges there in the second half. 2 conversions off the post, which were cruel when we've got plus 6.5. And then when it went to 4 tries all and we were down by 6, it was 24-18. I sort of felt like it was a harsh penalty to sort of give Manly that call. If only the Gold Coast didn't sort of stop. I can't remember who it was in the in-goal. He sort of gave
up.
Fodawaker, yeah. If he kept on running, or at least made the ref sort of think twice. He didn't even give them a chance, to be honest with you there. And then, we touched on the bunker earlier, and then at the end, we sort of felt like we covered with a try at the end there to Fermor off that grubber with dying seconds to go 26-22 there. And the bunker overrules it for an offside. Now, having gone back and watched this a few times, I agree. I do think he was offside. But then the other thing that you mentioned in the chat, which I went back and looked at, and it's happened a few times before, is that the player kicking it sort of runs the player onside. So Sexton enters the in-goal just ahead of Fermor, and that sort of plays him on. I can't believe they sort of missed that. So it was pretty brutal to lose that with all that euphoria of the last-minute try and then gets stripped away from us and all the pod followers, and we were in an 0-2 hole for our best bets. How did you see this one?
So you're saying that, like, the bunker who's sitting there in the nice aircon box and gets to watch replays and can choose whenever they like to change a game any way they see fit to justify any call, you're saying that when they do that, you'd like them to know the rules as well. I think you're asking a bit much. Look, guys, you're going to have to indulge us. This is going to be a bit more of an emotional recap of this game as opposed to just purely the takeaways. So first of all, before the game, Tapau was ruled out with COVID, which was a big win for the Titans and gave them really no excuse because we thought their forward pack could win the battle here. Once Tapau is ruled out as well, the Titans had to. So they had to start well. They didn't start well. Now, if we're going to say all the times we're unlucky, like the Titans butchered the first try, the first Manly try questionable, there was another Manly try which was overturned by the bunker for a very soft push in the back by Saab. And I thought that was too soft. I would have given that a try. So, like, you've got to also say the Titans invited a lot of this pressure onto themselves by not being good enough first half. And I thought Manly, excellent first half, barely made it. I couldn't remember them making an error. That they were 90% plus completions. Their defense was really good. They really gave the Titans nothing. And the worst moment of the first half was the Titans finally scored to cut it to 18-4. Of course, missed conversion or hit the post. Very next set, Izako spills his lollies on his own 10 and invite Manly right back in the final 2 minutes of the half. Now, Izako went off with an HIA 30 seconds later, so maybe he was in Disneyland. I don't know. But you've cut the game to 18-4. You're a team that can score in bunches. You have to defend your line with everything you've got. And you can talk about Fafita and a great try he scored in the second half, and he was in the news headlines all week. People are criticising him. Here's what I do know. He let Kieran Foran score a try right past him as if it was a game of Oztag. So those are the moments some people miss, but those are the moments where a true star doesn't get bowled over like that. Like, it's a lazy effort on the inside. They had to hold their line. They let in a try that was a backbreaker. Now, having said that, so what was the halftime score? 24-4. As we say, Titans come back into the game. Try, missed the conversion. Try, off the post. I commented in the group, we're going to score the same number of tries, but still not cover plus 6.5. That was exactly what happened. It does really hurt. And then, like, as you say, right at the end, they do score. Now, if you score right at the end to backdoor cover, you'd be lucky. So we can't, like, at the end of the day, I don't want to waste too much time on the pod saying if something had happened, we'd be 7-9 instead of 6-10. We're kind of missing the overall point. The issue is the Titans were inconsistent yet again, when if they'd played for the full 80, they would have won. I mean, Manly was falling apart by the end. Olakau'atu was off with cramps. They had several players out, HIA. If the Titans held their nerve, they would have run over the top of Manly, but the Titans spilled too many good ball opportunities, invited them back in, and, like, in the end, Manly gets a challenge, successful, penalty, leads by 8, just beats our plus 6.5. It's another bet I would take once again. I think on a different day, the Titans very well could have won it, but they only have themselves to blame. And while Manly clung on, and I feel like two teams that hurt us this weekend, the Cowboys and the Seagulls, would almost be chuckling to themselves thinking, geez, we got away with that one. It's also because the team we bet on didn't play well enough for 80 minutes. We pride ourselves on picking teams that will play well for 80, so when they don't, that's also on us. Moving to the Saturday nightcap, which was a great game, high quality, another one where the final score probably doesn't do the contest justice. At least a game where we won a bet. A couple of bets if you include my $5 same game multi on Dabble. But our best bet was Storm -6, and they did win by 16, 34-18 over the Cronulla Sharks, a battle that was second versus third. And we needed the Storm to win by 20 or more for the mixed matchup because the previous two components, Raiders, Titans, both underperformed. Having the Storm as our anchor, I always felt like that game could blow out late. It's exactly what happened. To fast forward to the very end, Justin Olam under the sticks to plant the ball for his hat trick. He spills it. They fell just agonisingly short. But, before that, I'll lead us off by saying we got a bit of luck in this game. None more so than Dale Finucane, the captain of the Sharks, and, of course, former Storm star, knocked out of the game for the entirety of the game, copping, I think, a forearm or elbow off Big Nelson. That's a huge loss for the Sharks, who lost Nikora in the lead-up with COVID. Mind you, the Storm lost the Bromwich brothers as well. Hanlon Uele was injured in the game too, so plenty didn't go the Sharks' way, but I thought they gave a pretty good account of themselves.
Yeah, they did for sure. And just touching on Nelson there, he actually did that in the second half as well, with a leading forearm with around 15 to go. That was play on, but I think he'll definitely be ruled out next week, and he needs to sort of clean up how he sort of charges into the defensive line there. So moving aside, you sort of touched on we had two teams that sort of failed for us playing 80, whereas the Storm were the complete opposite. And that's the joy that we sort of had in sort of wanting to lean Melbourne, is that they were a side that we can sort of count on them to play for 80 minutes. And we sort of felt the line was a bit cheap, and everything that we sort of envisioned came true. The Sharks were gritty and they were brave in the first half there, and the game was in the balance for a long period. And then again, you touched on how good Penrith were, but the Sharks, I don't think the Sharks could have played any better either, given the circumstances they had. And they didn't drop a ball. They had a perfect 100% completion rate until up to the 65th minute, I think. So the Sharks were still down by 2 tries at that point when they did make their first error. So for all the sort of joy that the Sharks had, and for all their good sort of fortunes that everyone's heaping praise on the Sharks, is that the Storm are at a cut above and they're a different level, and we sort of predicted that. And so kudos to us, even though it didn't really help when we had Olam right at the end there, as you said, to go to 20 points, which would have cashed the mixed matchup. And it does show how good the mixed matchup was in terms of how good of an edge it was in terms of value. We had two teams that did lose outright, and we were still a chance of cashing there with the Storm as an anchor leg. But anyway, we move on to next week. And, Melbourne sort of salutes to get us out of an 0-3 hole.
Yeah, Melbourne were outstanding and Melbourne were clinical. And, it was like equal, maybe late in the game once it got a little bit away from the Sharks. Melbourne probably got their advantage showing not only on the scoreboard but in the stats. But for the first kind of hour in the game, the teams had equal amount of line breaks, but the Storm were clinical with theirs and turned theirs into tries, whereas the Sharkies a couple of times couldn't quite ice it. And that also goes back to the fact that when you bet on a team like the Melbourne Storm and you talk about that the pleasure it is to bet on a professional outfit like that, they defend like their lives depend on it, which is how, yes, they've got more talent than a lot of other teams, but it's not talent that's just showing that pure desperation in defense. A lot of teams could take a leaf out of their book just with that sense of urgency and effort, because that was the difference. It allowed the Storm a couple of times to scramble and keep the Sharks at bay when the Sharks looked certain to score, and that allowed the Storm to keep the Sharks in front. And the Sharks played it as well as you could. They didn't come in to Melbourne in their shell. They played footy. They took chances sometimes. They were enterprising with their play. They were actually not too bad in defence, although I don't know if it's just me. I'm noticing a little bit of a trend that Nico Hines, as talented as he is, can be guilty of missing a tackle or two in the front line. And he came up with air a couple of times on Munster, who was absolutely phenomenal and ran the show. And that's the difference. Is the stars really shone for the Storm, and for the Sharkies, they're just not at that level yet, and they tried their hardest. And I take nothing away from the Sharkies, even though they lost by 16, as we said. The Storm were kind of close to perfect in this game, and just too clinical, and that was really the only gap between the sides. Today, the Roosters were not clinical. Let's bring that score up. At the SCG, Easter Sunday, the Roosters did cling on and win 22-14 over the Warriors. Your takeaways?
Yeah, very strange game, this one. The Roosters sort of left off where they were last week against the Broncos in the first half. Very, very clunky with the ball, plenty of mistakes. And the Warriors were just a bit more desperate and a bit more up for the contest. And it took a few late tries in the second half for the Roosters to get over the line there. But I'll tell you what, the line, well, I think it started at 16.5 by kickoff. I wouldn't have loved to have that. And especially with about 15 to go, I didn't even want to have a head-to-head ticket at $1.16 on the Roosters when the Warriors were right up for the contest. I sort of felt like Manu was quiet, and he's had a big few weeks, and he's sort of been the sole reason in some respects. As to the reason why the Roosters did get over the line the last few weeks. I think Tedesco's been quiet again. I'm not sure whether he's carrying an injury or not, but he doesn't seem to have that same sort of spark and intensity that he had the last few seasons. Whether he started slow and he would build into the year. Robinson sort of said in the press conference that he wants his team to be peaking in 8 to 10 weeks' time, which isn't really good to hear if you're a Roosters fan, because you want them to sort of play well now and get the points on the board, because who knows what can happen post-Origin with injuries and form. But yeah, so the Warriors were great, and not a whole lot of takeaways for me. Maybe it was a case of the Roosters looking ahead to Anzac Day next week.
But I still think the Roosters are going to be perfectly happy. I mean, go back to last week. Like, that wasn't a comprehensive win, and they got out of jail over the Broncos. They were trailing with a few minutes to go, but they get the win. Gritty enough, and kind of similar again today. Like, it was Verrills' first game, Suali's first game, and the Warriors came to play. To be fair, the Warriors got out in front. They were up 8-0. And I think the Warriors were just a little bit sloppy in key moments when they were in front, and even when the scores were level. That's when the game's in the balance. You got to grab the game by the scruff of the neck. But they didn't quite do that. And that allowed the Roosters to overwhelm them in the end. There was a pretty rough/bad call by the bunker right after the Warriors had scored points, and Fanua Blake was judged to have lost the ball, but it was stripped by Crichton. And the bunker's excuse for not overturning it was there's no intent. Well, okay, so he can read Crichton's mind, apparently, because I saw his hand around the ball, and when he pulled his hand out, the ball came out. So I thought that was pretty harsh because the Roosters ultimately got the ball there and extended the lead, and the Warriors just couldn't quite catch him. But, on a sunny afternoon at the SCG, that's why that line was what it was, because this Roosters side can put on points. So, give some credit to New Zealand that they restricted it all afternoon. They really weren't that far away. But, yeah, I'm not too worried about the Roosters because they're, deliberately kind of not overplaying their hand. And you just have to be wary if you're going to bet on them that there'll still be days where they'll turn it on. Things will go their way, like that really impressive game up in North Queensland. But there'll be the other games where they're trying new things and they're also just not showing everything they can do. And for them, a gritty win is more than enough. And the final game of the round was just that too, a gritty win. To talk about, positives, you gave a bonus tip on the pod, which was basically no try first 8 minutes, $1.88. I think they had to be under 70 points. There was no try in the first 30 minutes of the Dragons 21 beating the Knights 16. We don't play any totals unless something's really screaming at us. But I can now count 3 different occasions this season where we've said we do really like the total, but we didn't play a best bet. And in all 3 occasions, that's been correct. And, this one, we like the unders. It only kind of snuck under because of goal kicking, I guess you could say. So maybe we're vindicated staying away from that. But if you've got unders in this one, congratulations, you just got home. The key reason why you would have liked unders in Dragons Knights, apart from the fact these teams have been pretty pitiful in attack, but was the desperation factor. And that was evident. Both these sides were desperate. Dragons 1 win from the last 13. Knights on the back of 3 straight defeats as well. Both coaches feeling the pressure, and the players felt the pressure too all afternoon, didn't they?
Yeah, for sure. It was a very strange game. I think it ended up being the most exciting second half of the year, just in terms of 2 sides that were desperate, coming off 3-game losing streaks respectively, and they had sort of everything to gain and nothing to lose. And just to clean up something you said with the unders there, if you took points under, you win. But if you took tries under, you would have lost because there was 7 tries in the game. And who would have thought that Lomax would go 1-4 for his conversions, who's one of the best kickers in the league? Goes to show you that, sometimes taking the sort of right line is the difference between winning and losing, even though there were quite a few bomb tries that were left out there. I think in the first half, Tariq Sims went through, bombed a try. And then in the second half, the Dragons down the left-hand side there, I can't remember who they were.
Fiangai dropped it when Sully put him through for 1. Or Sully could have just dummied. He would have scored as well.
Yeah,
but they made it more exciting, didn't they?
Yeah, always seems to be the Dragons' way. They wanted to give a show for the crowd at the end there. Go up a field goal, 17-16. I thought Ben Hunt played great. And then one thing that is a little bit harsh if you're a Knights fan, and especially for everyone who had a +4.5, it was a brutal ending. I sort of felt Amon got caught at dummy half there. He didn't want to run, but there was an opportunity to run, and he realised it was the last tackle, so they just keep flinging the ball around, and then all of a sudden it's one of the tries of the year. But just before that, off the kickoff, I sort of felt Lomax, when he touched the ball and the Dragons recovered it, that was an offside to me. How did you see that one?
Well, I think Vossi even touched on that the his teammate, it might have been Sewer, retreated back behind the point where the ball was touched. Therefore, it was actually fair enough. But yeah, when the Dragons got the ball with 2 minutes to go and they're up 1, they had no intention of scoring. They're just trying to complete a set, and then they would have just been willing to defend for 60 seconds. But it was a weird one where things opened up, and as you say, Amon went for a scoot. Next thing, there's 15 passes, and that's absolutely brutal. If you did play the Knights +4.5, which was our lean because we kind of saw it as a 50-50 game, just as well we did stay off that, or it would have been yet another horrible defeat. I know we liked unders, so maybe we would have won on unders, but as I said to you, the way this season's gone, if we were on the unders, then Lomax would have kicked that final conversion. That's how it's kind of felt. When we were toying with, Dragons under 3.5 tries, that would have lost too. So I'm kind of glad we stayed out of that one. And someone mentioned this before, that there is still 1 game to go, and that's correct. We just thought we'll do this recap now, the familiar time for people Sunday. Maybe you've got more free time Monday to consume this, and it's only 1 game that we're not going to get a chance to recap. If anything crazy happens in Eels Tigers tomorrow, we'll touch on that on Wednesday, obviously. But But one other positive to come out of this week is I looked at the odds just before. If that Tigers line had crept up, if it was anywhere near 24, I probably would have had to bite the bullet and play the Tigers. But it's still 21.5. I'm going to not touch that game tomorrow. I'm going to hope that the Tigers get pumped, as I said on Wednesday, because if they play well tomorrow, it's only going to make me more angry after that steaming turd that they dropped on Sunday footy 7 days ago, which, as you can tell, I'm still not really over. But we'll, enjoy that game, guys. Obviously, it's Easter weekend, so hopefully everyone has been having a really good weekend. Despite our tips haven't got too much better, but there's a couple of shiny lights in there, like the same game multis. Even the 17-1, we had an NBA game that came down to the wire, and the morning of, their superstar player got ruled out with COVID. And then the other losing leg was the Titans. And as I say, I'll play that again. I feel like that was a good underdog spot for the Titans, and it was a lot closer than the final score. So, I feel like we're giving ourselves opportunities each week. They're not coming through yet, but we're going to stick at it. So enjoy the game tomorrow, guys. Good luck if you're having any punts on it. Always do it responsibly. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining me on this one on your Easter weekend, Padonis. We'll recuperate, and we'll be back at it on Wednesday to preview round 7.
We shall, and everyone enjoy your the rest of your weekend. Long weekend tomorrow, Easter Monday footy. How good? And if anything stands out tomorrow in same game multi or whatever, then I'll post it in the group. But otherwise, happy Sunday and Lego.